Okay, I would like to begin now. Good evening. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Palos Verdes Estates Homeowners Association Candidates Forum. Candidate meetings have been around almost as long as the League of Women Voters. In 1924, a small booklet published by the League of Women Voters suggested that we hold pre-election meetings and invite all candidates to speak, collect and give out nonpartisan information on candidates and issues, conduct candidate meetings as a service to voters because it gives them a means of forming a first-hand judgment of the candidates, and as a service to the candidates because it gives them an opportunity to present their views to audiences of varied political affiliation. Our forums are conducted for informational purposes without a hidden agenda and are controlled by principles of nonpartisanship, and your vote is an essential step in the process of democracy. In exercising our choice for elective office, we affirm our faith in the democratic process. We are therefore pleased to present the following candidates seeking a position on the Palos Verdes Estates Homes Association Board: Marlene Breen, Carol Beth Cozen, Mary Elwell, Edward Fountain, Philip Frangs, Dale Hoffman, Mike Moody, Reed Schott, and Carol Sweats. Of the 9, the following candidates are not present: Carol Sweats and Mary Elwell.
Also Fountain. Oh.
Ed Fountain.
Oh. Ed Fountain?
We have an empty chair.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right, Ed's missing.
Sorry, didn't know that. Oh, okay. And Ed Fountain not present, sorry. Each candidate has agreed to abide by the guidelines stipulated in the letter of invitation. The format is as follows. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening statement and then 1 minute to respond to questions from the audience. Our timers will hold up a card indicating when their time is up, although you can see when the time is up by the clock up there and back here, so we're really have all sorts of ways of checking on that.
I'm not sure of that. I'm going to show you the time. That's
okay. That's the timer. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. While we will not try to stop you in mid-sentence, please be responsive. Sorry, please be responsive to time limitations. I would ask the audience that you remain as quiet as possible while the candidates are speaking so that everyone may hear. And please hold your applause until the forum has ended so that the candidates will have all the time possible for getting their points across. And as usual, we ask that you turn off your cell phones. We will then, after the opening statements, open the forum to questions from the audience. And I have to tell you, we have received a lot of questions online, over 40 as a matter of fact. And we have gone through them and tried to combine some and group them, so I think we have covered all of the areas that there has, where the concern has been demonstrated. We will conclude our question and answer period at 8:40 or 8:45 probably, and each candidate will then present a 1.5-minute closing statement. The video recording of our forum is also being taken right now. I mentioned we've gotten so many questions online, and you have the opportunity to submit questions yourselves from the audience as well. Please hold up the cards as you finish them, and a league member will collect them throughout the forum. You may address your question to a particular candidate or to all, but other candidates will be given the opportunity to respond as well. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Those that fall in the same general area, we have tried to consolidate them to allow us to cover as many topics as possible. All questions become the property of the League of Women Voters of Palos Verdes Peninsula, San Pedro. The order of opening statements was determined by lot before we began, and you'll see that the order is just up here on the dais. So we will begin with Marlene, please.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. I'm assuming that everyone's kind of checked out the website and has a general idea of our background, so I'm not going to go into detail about what I do. But I would like to let you know why I'm inspired for this position. In addition to designing cities, parks, and architecture, Olmsted also provided for the ongoing care and development of his projects through entities such as our Homes Association. Members of the board and the art jury are the protectors, not only of building style, but also of our quality of life and our community values. Recently, I participated in some forums specifically about Olmsted, and it was interesting to see speakers from other parts of the country in very similar situations to ours with creative solutions to things that are happening in our community as well. I think it was a very inspiring experience, and that's one of the reasons why I'm up here in front of you today. I have a short list of goals. One is I'll make a commitment to protect and enhance the character of our PVE communities. I plan to review and realign the PVHA policies to be consistent with our CC&Rs. I would like to promote consistent standards between PVHA and PVE, create an opportunity for neighborhoods to determine the character and parameters for their future development, simplify the art jury application and approval process, institute a transparent business model, modernize technologies for effective business interface with residents and professionals as well as interoffice, and support community outreach, education, and participation concerning PVHA activities. Again, thank you very much for coming tonight, and I look forward to your questions tonight.
Mr. Moody?
Thank you, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the organizations that have put this forum together, and particularly thank all of you who came out on a rainy night. I know there's no football, but you still came out. And you are the heart of this city, and you are what makes it go. Now, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum tonight. I was coming down PV Drive North and realized that 18 years after I last sat in this very chair and said my goodbyes to the city after sitting on being on the city council, I'm back again, seeking office again. And I ask myself, is there something wrong with you, Mike? And I suspect a lot of you have that same question in mind. And another quarter mile went by and I realized, no, there is nothing wrong with me. I want to accomplish two goals if I'm elected to the Homes Association. First one, bring efficiency and an improved sense of public service to the Homes Association. And secondly, to do everything I can to undo the catastrophe that has been brought upon this organization because of the illegal sale of the parklands.
Okay.
Is it my turn?
Yes, Mr. Franks?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Phil Frings. I currently serve on the Palos Verdes Homes Association Board and have served for the community on the board since 1997. I'm very proud of my service, and I'm proud of the service of the other directors. The Homes Association works very hard on maintaining the quality of life in Palos Verdes, making Palos Verdes what we've come to know it. And we do that diligently. We do that on an ongoing basis. The transaction that Mike's referring to is subject to litigation, so we can't really talk about it, but the appeals court will rule on whether it was a transaction that needs to be undone or whether it was a transaction that was completely lawful. And we'll know that in probably about 90 days. So I can't really comment on that particular item, but I'm happy to be here, and I hope that I'll have your support to continue in my role at the Homes Association.
Thank you. Mr. Schott?
Good evening. My name is Reed Schott. First, I'd like to express my appreciation to the Lanada Bay Home Association for sponsoring this event, the League of Women Voters, and to everyone for being here on, as Mike said, kind of a dismal, rainy, cold night. Next, with regards to my background, I'm not sure if everyone had an opportunity to look at each candidate's background, so I'll provide a brief summary. I've lived in Malaga Cove with my family and have been a resident of PVE for 12 years. Currently, I'm a volunteer parkland ranger. and have had memberships in the PV Golf Club, the PV Historical Society, and the Malaga Cove Homeowners Association. Through my volunteer activities, I've developed a great appreciation for our parklands and city. My formal education includes a BSBA degree, graduate studies in business. I hold real estate licenses and have been an accredited member of the Appraisal Institute, where I've served on national committees. I've also testified as an expert witness in both state and federal courts. I came to California over 20 years ago as an officer of a pension fund advisor, and I've stayed. I like it here, and I really like Palos Verdes Estates. I've dedicated about 2 years rebuilding my home in PVE, requiring art jury approvals. In addition, I've gone through the PVHA view restoration process, so I understand various challenges faced by many PVE residents. I believe this process can be improved, and that's one of the reasons that I'd like to serve. I believe we are blessed to live in a city adjacent to the ocean that has green belts and substantial open space. However, I believe the character of our city is threatened by recent actions of the PV Homes Association. It's alarming to me that the Homes Association sold parkland to an individual, and furthermore, that it's appealing a judge's decision that it was illegal to do so. It's also disturbing that the Homes Association has prevented democratic elections in the last 9 years by using the quorum amount as an excuse. To preserve our parkland and restore open and democratic elections, I believe our board needs new leadership. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cozen?
Hi, I'm Carol Beth Cozen. I want to thank the Granada Bay Homes Association and the League of Voters for inviting me here tonight. I grew up here in Palos Verdes Estates and had the privilege of attending Monte Malaga Elementary School, Malaga Cove Middle School, and Palos Verdes High School. After living and working in San Francisco, New York, Dallas, Manhattan Beach, I made a decision to return to Palos Verdes to raise my children. They are third generation here in Palos Verdes. My parents live nearby in the home I was born in. I do a lot of community service here. I'm a mentor at Palos Verdes High School. I'm on the board for the American Institute of Architecture for the South Bay. I'm active in the Palos Verdes Golf Club. As an architect, I bring a unique perspective to the board with an understanding of how to navigate through the city process and the necessity to protect our members' property rights. As a newly appointed Palos Verdes Homes Association board member, I continue the board's efforts to improve our community by preserving the charm and distinctiveness of Palos Verdes and working to improve its long-term financial security. I will continue the board's goal to improve the long-term financial security. I will also continue to engage with the community to try to strengthen our relationship with our members. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
See, my name's Dale Hoffman. I'm a transplanted Midwesterner. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. Spent my high school years and then went to college up in Iowa and decided that I would join the wagon train leaving Independence, Missouri, and I ended up in 1958 in Hermosa Beach, the gold country. So I worked for 44 years in the aerospace industry at North American first and then TRW. Retired from full-time work in 2001 and have been keeping my finger in consulting, but also decided as I was approaching retirement that I wanted to give back to the community. So I was fortunate enough to be appointed to the Planning Commission, spent a little over 8 years there. Then decided that I would like to do something else and had the good fortune again to be selected as a director of the Homes Association. Have other interests too and hobbies, but I really feel that I have something to contribute to and have contributed to the Homes Association. a good sense of how the organization works, what some of the needs are for improvement and everything, and certainly would relish your support in terms of voting for me in the election coming. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much. Okay, we'd now like to go to questions that have been submitted. We've gotten a number online, as I mentioned. I'd like to combine a couple of the questions that we wanted to start out with. The question asks, what is the single biggest issue that you believe will challenge the Palos Verdes Homes Association in the next few years? And also combine that with what are your own, along with that, what are your top 3 priorities for future activities? And not include the issue regarding the transfer of parkland, which comes up in a number of other questions. So what is the single biggest issue that you believe will challenge the Homes Association in the next few years? And what are your, within that, what are your top 3 priorities? And your answers are, time allowed is 1 minute. And perhaps we can reverse it,
Sure.
Mr. Hoffman, if you would like to
Yeah.
begin.
I apologize, I didn't realize the mic was on, and it was not on for Carol Beth either. Let's see, so what do I think is the biggest challenge that will be faced, or is being faced, or will be faced? Let's see, I would certainly, in my 7+ years on the Homes Association, it has been litigation, litigation, litigation. I would certainly like to see that go away. In terms of, what was the other half of
The single biggest issue and the top, within that, your top, or part of that, your top 3 priorities.
Okay, my top 3 priorities would obviously be try and get an amicable solution to the litigations that are ongoing, not create any more. I think there is a challenge within the organization to get much more of a dialogue going with the community and everything. We have tried to make some changes on the basis of what we, the feedback that we have. I think we also have something to do with our archiving and everything.
Your time's up, so,
Yep.
sorry.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Not your
Carol
fault.
Beth?
Thank you. I would say the most challenging issue is that I would like to have our members more cohesive. There seems to be a problem with the litigation, and I just would like to reach out more to our members and try and make sure that they are happy and that we're doing a good job for them. The priorities that we are working on are to continue to protect our protective restrictions, which is our CCNRs. We are archiving our documents and just community outreach.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schott?
The single biggest challenge I think that we face in the Homes Association and our community is to basically preserve and respect the deed restrictions. In the appeal that's going on right now, and this is public, so I'm not saying anything that's not clear in with this, that there's an argument by the Homes Association attorneys that the deed restrictions aren't really valid. The covenants to sell parkland are valid, which were done 14 years before the deed restrictions. And the fact that if the legal cases are decided in favor of the Homes Association, it really scares me that possibly any parkland can be sold, because that's what the attorneys for the association are trying to do. That's my single biggest concern. Secondly, I think we need to have democratic elections. It hasn't been that way. There's a petition to try to do this, so I hope we can achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the biggest thing we face is simply litigation. Mr. Schott's the person suing the Homes Association over the quorum. Mr. Harbison out in the audience is sued over the other matters. Unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation that's being generated. His statement about what's going on in the appeals court is a misstatement. So unfortunately, with the continuation of misstatement, I think the most important thing is for us to get back to normal. The Homes Association is a corporation. It's not a government entity. The fact that a quorum is required is part of the bylaws. It's subject of his litigation. I can't talk about it any further than that. We want people to come out and participate. We hold monthly board meetings, and rarely does anybody come. And these candidates, Marlene came once when she was making an effort to do something. It was a little bit of a sideshow. Mr. Fay out here came a couple of times.
Could you speak
but
more
the rest,
directly about yourself and not reference everybody else?
Well, you're asking about I'm trying to answer the question.
I understand. But
Okay,
just
well, the
speak
point
about
is
your own-
we have board meetings, and we would love to have people come out to the board meetings. The fact of the matter is they don't. And so we would like to have more engagement and involvement by the members of the association, and we'd be delighted.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Moody?
Obviously, my biggest concern is this litigation and the illegal sale of the parklands. And I think we're going to beat that dog to death tonight before it's over. The other three issues that I have, we need to reach out, the Homes Association needs to reach out and engage the public. I have yet to meet anyone that comes up to me and said, gee, isn't the Homes Association great? We love them. The people in the city are afraid of the Homes Association. They dislike the Homes Association. They don't trust the Homes Association. And that's not right because they're good people on it. So let's do some outreach and try to act as a public servant rather than a ruler. I'm very concerned about the election process. I think it speaks.
You could finish the sentence. It's okay.
Well, I think the reason people don't vote, it speaks for itself. They just don't like the system.
Ms. Breen?
Obviously, we have a lot of issues going here. Litigation has been listed. I think the reason why we have litigation is because there's a disconnect between what our CC&Rs are telling us and the actions that have happened recently in our city. I'm not going to go into it any more than that, except that it does need to be resolved. The whole business of democratic elections, you know, since 2009, no elected official up here, even though it is a corporation. We're supposed to be representing you, the people in our community. And self-appointed corporation has its own interests at heart, not necessarily those of the community, unless the community steps forward. Development is a big issue for me. I can look into the future and see us becoming another Manhattan Beach or another Orange County. I could see our parklands dwindling, not necessarily from sale, but also from a lack of care. So I would like to get these other issues out of the way so that we can focus on development and start looking to the future and create a very viable organization that helps our community.
Thank you very much. For the moment, I'd like to veer off in another direction. We'll come back to a lot of these issues, but if we could begin in the middle, Mr. Frangs, if you would like to begin the response. The question asks, how do you think the process for selecting the art jury is working? Are changes in order? If so, what would you recommend?
Well, the process for selecting the art jury has been to make sure that we follow the regulations, which is to make sure that we have representatives from the Association of Architects. And all of our art jury members, I believe, are members of the AIA right now. So that's number one qualification. Second thing is we look for people that are, besides that qualification, are working in the area that are involved in residential architecture. And we have one member on the jury who is involved in landscape architecture, and I believe that we have a very competent art jury. And when we have openings, we solicit the community to find people available, and we select them on the basis of their qualifications.
Thank you. I think we'll continue going from left to right. So, Mr. Moody, if you would like to respond to that question about the art jury.
I don't really know how I would approach the selection of art jury members. I haven't done it before. My experience with them has not been terribly pleasant on a couple of issues on my own remodel and with the city. So, and I would like to see some, I know it's a very objective issue, subjective rather, and I would like to see some process built in where there is an appeal or a discussion on these subjective matters.
Is that it? Okay, thank you.
Marlene.
Marlene, yes, thank you.
Again, not being currently a member of the board, we're not privy to how these things are selected. However, if I am elected, I would like to sit in on a few of those art jury meetings and get a feel for what goes on there. I'm thinking one of the things that would be really important is to somehow open up that process to the public. I know in other cities they do have an occasional meeting where the public's invited. Also, the art jury could reach out to the community and start educating them about architecture. I think there are a lot of things that can happen to create a more educated environment around, you know, which things are acceptable and which things are not. Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman?
Let's see, relative to the process by which art jurors, if you will, are replaced, I've found to be perfectly satisfactory. I had occasion when I was on the Planning Commission to sit in on regular art jury meetings. I have taken the opportunity on occasion to sit in on it again. I think they're largely constructive in terms of the ability to appeal. I think there's a forum there. You know, the applicants are perfectly open, as is the art jury, to having a dialogue and coming up with. So I don't think I would change anything in that regard. So as it stands, I think we have a good objective group of folks there. It will turn over with time. It's turned over in the 14, 15 years that I've been there, but always is steadfast in what its charter is, and that is to hold a high standard.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cozen?
Yes, well, as a newly elected board member, I have not been involved with art jury selection. But I do know that they try and to adhere to the restrictions that we have in the Palos Verdes protective restrictions, and that their goal is to continue preserving our uniqueness and our historical precedents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schott?
First, I believe that there should be enough adequate amount of publicity if there's going to be some vacancies in the art jury positions, so that you can have some competitive situation and also select the best people. I also feel that conflicts of interest should not be allowed. I think that my own experience, I've felt that maybe that's occurred in the past. Maybe some of you have too. And then that shouldn't occur with the people that we select with the art jury. I haven't been on the art jury before, obviously because I haven't served as a director, but I believe that there is a provision in looking at the bylaws that allow for the president of the association to also serve, I believe, on the art jury. And I think more involvement, or at least more supervision or some activity by the directors of the PVHA would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll begin now with Mr. Moody, and we'll continue going around that way. The next question asks, it was directed to those within the category of the robe candidates is what it says, but we're opening it to all. If elected, what will you do to make the planned actions of the PV Homes Association more transparent so that members may comment before a decision is actually made? So if you would begin, Mr. Moody.
I think probably the Homes Association could use a consultant and bring somebody in to show them how to open themselves up and recognize that they are public servants. The common feeling in the city that I get everywhere is that this is a star chamber and it's secretive and it's bad. It may not be true, of course. And I, again, go back, we've got some fine people. But perception is 90% of the deal. And we need some advice. The Homes Association needs some advice on how to open itself up and become more user-friendly.
Thank you. Ms. Breen?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think the term user-friendly is a good direction to go in. As far as transparency, yeah, it gets a little difficult to get information there. They're always busy at the desk. You know, the doors are closed at the art jury. As Mr. Frank said, very few people show up at the board meetings. And I've been to a board meeting, and other people have been to board meetings and told not to speak. So it's kind of interesting process there. Anyway, yeah, I think just opening up to the processes that go on. I think a little bit of education, maybe offering some nights where we talk about architecture or give tours of the Homes Association, talk a little bit about the history. I think it'd be great to get some community dialogue going. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman?
Let's see, I think I understand the problem. I'm trying to deal with, you know, what is it that someone needs and would like to get involved in the decision-making process. There is an opportunity for anybody to come, well, yeah, anybody to come to the meetings. So I think there's an openness there. However, I would like to find a way to better deal with the, let me say, the perception. And I don't know what the reality is because I'm just one person. So I rely on you folks to determine what the reality is. But I think we do need to reach out and say, how can we be more open and everything? Communication is one thing. The social media, we probably don't do as good a job as we ought, but we're trying to reach out in that area. So I'm open to new good ideas.
Thank you. Ms. Cozen?
I think in transparency with our, we've been trying with our website, we've been trying to get the bulletins out. I would like to make the meetings more welcoming. And I am certainly trying to get out there for all the community events.
Thank you, Mr. Schott.
Thank you.
I believe in the history of the Palos Verdes Homes Association that the board was only, people only had a choice other than the incumbents twice up until 3 years ago. Twice, that's all they've had a choice. That's pathetic. So I think one of the main things that needs to happen is that there needs to be communication, try to get people involved so that they are aware of the coming elections and to make it easier for those people to be part of the election. Right now there's a resolution 177 that makes it a necessity for anybody to run as a candidate has to have 100 signatures. City Council only requires 25. That's ridiculous. It shouldn't be that difficult. And furthermore, the incumbents don't even honor the resolution that requires the signatures. None of them have obtained signatures. So anyway, I try to get more people to run for the elections. I think that they could have events like home tours. We have fabulous homes, fabulous history, so there's ways to get people involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franks.
So the association, as a corporation, which I stated earlier, I think it's important for people to understand that the decision-making at the Homes Association Board is in a very narrow area. A lot of the discussions about good ideas are probably more appropriate for the city and city council positions, but for the Homes Association, we have a very limited area of authority and responsibility. So in terms of decision-making, everybody is welcome to come to the meetings and listen to the debate that goes on between directors before decisions are made. But there's very few decisions you'd be interested in, but you're welcome to come. I mean, it has to do with, things like setbacks. It has to do with a whole variety of arcane things. It doesn't have to do with art jury. The art jury stands alone and has the responsibility to do their work without overview from the Homes Association by its bylaws. And regarding the election, the concept of a petition election is new to us because we've not had people in the last 30 or 40 years interested in running by petition. We set up a process. It does require 100. That's the minimum number that the state corporations code requires. That's why it's 100.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, we'll begin now with Ms. Breen. The next question, do you favor term limits for PV Homes Association directors? Why or why not?
Definitely term limits, and they should be on a rotating schedule. I think you need to have continuity, but you also need to have new ideas injected every once in a while. I think promoting elections so that the public is represented is a really good idea. I think appointments are part of the process, but should not be the only part of the process for new people coming onto the board.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Let's see, I'm a bit on the fence for term limits. I'm neither for them nor against them. I've seen instances where I think they're helpful. I've seen others where they're not particular ones. I'd be open to having a discussion about it. One concern that I would have is would certainly be interested in knowing, would people, and we're probably talking about 2 terms in a row or something like that. I know it's very difficult to get people who are interested and willing to invest the time and everything. So as long as there would be a continual flow into the system, I don't see any reason not to have term limits.
Ms. Kosher?
I certainly don't have any desire to retire on the job.
I would be open to a discussion about term limits. I do think also being new on the board, I want to stress how important it is to have a continuum of people that have been working on the board in the past, just to have a continuum with any issues that have come up.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schott.
Yes, I'm definitely in favor of term limits. I believe that what Carol Beth just expressed about having some continuity can be done by staggered terms. So there's 5 directors. The terms are 3, 2, and 1 years. So that would allow for this type of continuance and for a better transition. Thank you.
Mr. Franks.
I will be serving, if elected, for the 20th year. So obviously, term limits have not been in place, and I'm the longest serving of the existing directors. There may be an advantage to term limits, but until the litigation started a couple of years ago, the truth of the matter was the Homes Association had to reach out far and wide in the community to find people interested in serving. But we have, and we have interviewed those people, and they, when we've had openings, they have been appointed, and then they stand for election at the next annual meeting. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious that now for 3 years we've had contested elections, and we have a very simple way for people to become a candidate. They need 100 signatures out of 5,500 members, and that gives them the opportunity to put themselves in play, and the board also has the opportunity and responsibility to and capability to select experienced candidates to serve as a slate that the board selects.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
Well, I agree with Carol Beth that if we need to have continuous change in membership so we don't lose that corporate memory. But term limits foster a sense of ownership. I've seen it in cities, I've seen it in our city council, I've seen it here in the Homes Association, and in all respect, Mother Teresa was alive when Mr. Frings was appointed to the Homes Association. That was a long time ago. So I think we have to have, sorry, Phil.
I'm not sure what your point is, Mike.
My point is, well, my point is some people get in office too long and shouldn't stay there, and in any organization, particularly in a public environment. Term limits, I'm 100% for.
Thank you. Okay, if we could begin with Mr. Hoffman now. This is a question that came in online. The 50% quorum requirement has prevented PV Homes Association directors from being elected by members for 9 straight years. There is a petition filed to reduce this quorum requirement so that PV Homes Association members will be able to use a democratic process in determining the board through this election, rather than have the board simply reappoint themselves when there is no quorum. Why are you in favor or opposed to this effort to lower the quorum? If you would begin.
Let's see, I have no problem with the process. However, it is something that's in the court system right now. So, I find it hard to comment one way or the other. I will abide by the outcome of the suit, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Ms. Cozen?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I have the same thing to say as JL. We can't really comment right now because there's litigation about the process.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schott?
I really think that this is an important issue and that it needs to be addressed. We haven't had a quorum in 9 straight years. Last year there were only 1,600. We needed, I believe, 2,500 votes, far short of what we need. So there needs to be a lowering of this quorum. Also, there's a lot of people that live in PVE now that actually they're residents abroad in other countries. When you take a look at how that might affect this 50% quorum, it also reduces it. And the 50% quorum was established 92 years ago. That's a long time. Things are different today. So I think that this needs to be revisited, and I think it's essential to do this so we can have a democratic process with our election. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Franks?
Mr. Schott's the litigant here. He's the one suing the organization over this. And so the issue is that the courts will make the decision about whether the quorum will be lowered or not. But the quorum is like any other corporation. Its stakeholders have to be represented. It's not like a city government where the number of registered voters and multiple people in a community or in a household can vote. It simply is 1 vote per parcel, and it requires a majority to be represented to conduct business.
Thank you. Mr. Moody?
I'm like Jack Benny. I'm thinking. This quorum thing is holding back a transfer of members to the board, and it is disenfranchising a lot of people. It is patently unfair, and the way I see, and the other thing the Homes Association is doing coupled with that, they don't count the ballots. And the way to get by, in my opinion, the way to get by all of this, count the ballots and take the top 5 results, and those who don't make the top 5 resign. make this a democratic process. There's nothing illegal about that, and would certainly open it up to anyone in the city who would like to be on the association.
Thank you. Spreen?
I think the key is that there are several ways to have better community involvement. Everyone out there can vote. It would be the simplest thing to do and get us over that 50%. I think sometimes that is difficult because a lot of people don't even know what the art jury does, what the Homes Association does, especially the new families that have come in. They're busy with young children. So the Homes Association has not really promoted itself. Also, I think it's important to get out there and let people know what's going on in the Homes Association. Lowering the quorum will, I think, generate some more interest within the community and get the community involved. Other homeowners associations have lower quorums. There are very few that are up at 50%. And when you look at other organizations and look at the general trends, I think 9 years is too long to go without somebody voting. And I recall past years.
Thank you very much.
That's it. Thank you.
I'm going to take the liberty of addressing a question to Mr. Frings that came specifically to you. You have stated, because it references a question that just came up, you have stated that if a quorum is not reached, the PV Homes Association will not count the ballots due to the cost involved. Since the public would like to know the outcome, even if a quorum is not realized, why have you turned down the offer from volunteers to do the tally under the supervision of the Homes Association and the judge overseeing the election?
Quite simply because it's become a political juggernaut. We voluntarily counted the ballots after the first contested election, and the association spent about $30,000 extra over that election, over the $10,000 we would normally spend. It ended up costing $40,000 to do that. When we counted the ballots, 60% of the votes went to the incumbents, 40% of the votes went to the challengers. That statement was made, and the organizer of Robe immediately put out a press release that said the results were something else. And so we just can't continue to throw this football around. If we have a quorum, everybody is set to count the ballots. Without a quorum, there's no point in spending the money or creating a political event. It has no basis for us. If we end up counting the ballots and it turns out that some people that were challengers and there was not a quorum, they're not going to be seated, so what is the point?
Thank you. Would somebody else like to comment? Mr. Schott.
You know, when you take a look at some national elections, for instance, in Alabama, as we all know, there was a very controversial Senate race there. They expected typically maybe 20–25% of people to vote. Only 40%, well, an amazing 40% really showed up. So that was 40% in a very contested election. And for us to have 50%, also when you take a look at the mayoral elections, like in LA, I think less than 20% showed up. So to expect 50% for our homeowners to show up for an election and to vote, it's just, it's unreasonable. It needs to be lowered. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment? Yes, Mr. Moody.
According to the 2010 census, 15% of the property owners in Palos Verdes don't even live here. This leaves us trying to get a 50% quorum out of the remaining 85. And that is, you run the numbers, to get somebody through this mill, you have to have about 2/3 of the people voting. We can't get 2/3 of the people to stand up for the national anthem at a football game anymore. How are we going to get somebody elected with that kind of requirement? It is just patently unfair and unreasonable. And again, in all respect, I think the president's answer was self-serving in keeping with the status quo. Let's work together to find a way to clean up the process.
May I rebut, since he's
Please.
directing it to me?
Please.
Mike, everybody gets their ballot by mail. It doesn't matter where you live.
They don't.
They get their ballot by mail, Mike. And so if they have a valid mail address, the mail goes to them.
No, it doesn't.
It does, Mike.
I think we're going to have to stop right there.
Can I comment on what I think the question was?
Please.
It really didn't have anything to do with quorum or anything. It was, if you don't get one, should you reveal what the ballots that were there said? And I don't know for what purpose. We can't take any action on them.
Why not?
They're,
Why not?
because it's precluded in the bylaws. A quorum is necessary to hold a meeting and to validate. So I'm just, you know, it's probably interesting, but I don't know what you do with the results. It's one of those
I
quandaries
think we'll
for me.
have to stop there and move on to some other issues if we
Yes.
could. I'd like to move into the parklands issue. We have a question from the audience. Do you believe the parklands should be made to be as accessible and enjoyable as possible, or preserved to retain the city's quiet character? And I believe we begin with Ms. Cozen.
I think there's room in our parklands for both. I think some areas can be enjoyed by our trails, and some of the parkland and its solitude is what brings the uniqueness of Palos Verdes. So I think there's room for both.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Schott.
I believe there's an important balance to strike between the privacy and security of individuals and the enjoyment, recreational enjoyment of our residents for the parklands. In some situations, there's been trails. One example is the Del Sol Fire Road that's been in existence for a very long time. Some 7 residents that abut it on the lower portion on El Elevado. They actually tried to close that trail and institute a new trail, realign it up about a few hundred feet with about 70 steps. Also have some signs that would impose a $500 fine if people didn't stay on that trail. So there's some things, and actually this was approved by the Homes Association in 2015 by a letter from their president. And I have a copy of it right here. So I think you can go too far in trying to, try to condone some of the privacy that maybe some residents want, as an example.
Thank you. Mr. Franks?
Just to rebut, Reed's statement about the Elevado thing was misstated. The Homes Association never supported anything other than the movement of the trail up the hill. Any and everything else that occurred and happened amongst those homeowners, and it happened in the city environment with the planning, with the Parkland Committee. So that's just not true. To answer the question, I think there's a great deal of sentiment within the community to keep parklands quiet for quiet enjoyment. Right now, there's a lot of controversy in Lanada Bay over efforts to beautify the bluffs. And there's a lot of people in that community that do not want to see that. Marlene's involved in that project. And so I think quiet enjoyment is the principal reason why the parklands exist. The original plan had every neighborhood with a school so that the schools were available for recreational use, and the parkland was available by and large for quiet areas except for things like the golf club and the beach and athletic club.
Mr. Moody?
I agree with Ms. Cozen.
Okay. Ms. Breen?
That was quick. I also agree with Carol. There is room for everything. In fact, Olmsted provided for everything. Some areas are more amenable to more public types of activities. Recreation was a big deal with Olmsted. Other areas that are a little more remote, yes, quiet time for that. I don't think all of our parklands need to have the same character. And I think you need to look at the terrain, you need to look at the specific locations, and each area has kind of its own thing going on. Quick clarification, written into our CCNRs, various uses. firehouses, parks or playgrounds, private schools, art galleries, museums, libraries, churches, private studios for artists, musicians. This is all written in our codes. So it's not only for quiet enjoyment. And that has more to do with residents' preferences than it does what's actually written in the CC&Rs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, where do we end up? Thank you. Mr. Hoffman. This next question.
I haven't
Oh, sorry, yes, go ahead.
started here. Yeah, oh, that's all right. Let's see, I guess the thing that I'm most concerned about in terms of the parkland is their availability to the public. I happen to live close to the trails that go along between Torrance and PVE, and some of those, you walk down them and people have decided that they want it for their own pleasure, and so they have infringed on it. I know that's overall, I think it's worth saying in this forum here, it is not the Homes Association's responsibility to police the parklands. The parklands are owned by the city. And so I think infringing upon the availability of the parklands for public use is probably something that we need to be vigilant on, but I think they're taking some steps. They have in the past, and I think they will continue to do so.
Thank you. Begin with Mr. Schott now. This question deals with trees. The abundance of large mature trees distinguishes the city of Palos Verdes Estates from other surrounding beach and peninsula cities. If elected, what would you do to protect mature trees and assure that the future of PVE includes the beauty and majesty of its urban forest?
It's very true that what makes PV unique is its trees, its vegetation. Anyone that's looked at the Olmsted's plan for PVE, they know they planted thousands of trees, many different varieties. And I think it's important, though, that when these trees are planted, especially the larger ones, that they don't impede upon the views of our residents. I think that can be done because we have a lot of very undulating topography. And as a result, I think it's possible to have plant trees that can be very tall that don't obstruct any views. And the other thing is that in different areas, I think Marlene alluded to this, is that there can be different vegetation, maybe more natural vegetation that's indicative of this area. So I think that there needs to be a variety of vegetation, but we shouldn't forget what the Olmsteds did when they're landscaping with PVE. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Franks.
So the urban forest, as you described it, is admired by some and hated by others. If the urban forest blocks your view, you don't like it. And the Homes Association has a process that will allow people in the community to address and deal with this. The preference of the association is that neighbor and neighbor get together and resolve issues about views and trees. If that doesn't work, we have a mediation process, and the mediation process's goal is to get the two parties together over trees to figure it out. But by and large, I think one of the beauties is the foresting of Palos Verdes, and I think many people like it. And we have to remember, it wasn't planted by anybody as a master plan. The original developers built a nursery and provided samples of good plantable materials, but all the planting that's taken place on these residences was done by the homeowners.
Thank you. Mr. Moody.
Well, I think the presence of trees and a good urban forest is what makes this city so special. And it's absolutely wonderful, but trees grow, and trees become bothersome, and trees block views from multi-million-dollar homes, and we have to have a reasonable balance between the tree and the view and the property values that the tree is degrading. Again, it's a very subjective thing, and we have to negotiate with the owners.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Breen?
A lot of those original trees that were in that nursery in Lunada Bay were selected because they were fast-growing. The original developers of the city wanted the city to look green and established quickly. And I know the city has a process where they're replacing these trees that are reaching the end of their age, and it should be very